The lobby of 1600 California Street smelled like floor polish and expensive coffee. Dan Mercer stood by the security desk holding a paper bag, chicken salad from the deli on Larimer, Victoria's favorite, still warm through the grease-stained paper. He'd picked it up on his way from dropping Lily at school, because it was a Tuesday, and Victoria had texted that morning, back-to-back meetings, won't have time for lunch. And Dan had thought, surprise, he hadn't been to her office in almost a year. Not because she didn't invite him. She did, sometimes, in that vague way people say you should come by sometime, and never mean it, but because the office was her space. The glass tower, the corner office, the title on the door, CEO. Dan's space was the house in Wash Park, the kitchen where he cooked, the desk in the guest room where he designed logos for local businesses at 2 a.m. when Lily was asleep. They had their territories. It worked, or it had worked, or he'd told himself it worked. The security guard was a man in his 50s with a gray mustache and a name tag that read T. Reyes. He looked up from his phone. "Can I help you, sir?" "Yeah, I'm here to see Victoria Mercer." "Hale Mercer Group, 14th floor." Dan set the paper bag on the counter. "I'm her husband. Brought her lunch." Reyes blinked. Then he laughed. Not a mean laugh. A confused, genuine laugh. The kind you make when someone says something that doesn't. Her husband. Reyes leaned back in his... He gestured toward the elevators with his coffee. "Sir, I see your husband every day. Nice guy. Usually comes in around 8. Brings her a latte." "There he is, actually. Coming out right now." Dan turned. The elevator... The doors... A man's out. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a charcoal suit that cost more than Dan's monthly wage, holding a coffee cup in one hand and a leather folder. He was talking on a Bluetooth earpiece, nodding at something the person on the other end was saying, and he walked like he owned the lobby. Like he owned... Dan didn't recognize him. He'd never seen this man before. The man walked past the security desk without... He said something into the... "Tell the board I'll have the numbers." And he pushed through the glass doors and out into the September. Dan stood very... The paper bag was warm. The chicken salad smelled like dill and mayonnaise. Behind him, Reyes was watching him with an expression that was shifting from amusement. "You okay there, buddy?" Dan, his mouth, closed it. His brain was doing that thing it did when information hit. The slow, grinding attempt to reconcile two facts that couldn't. Fact 1, he was victim. They'd been married years. He was 8. He'd been in the room. Fact 2, security guard, who sat at this desk every day, who saw Victoria come and go, had just looked at her and said, "Husband." Their third fact, forming, ugly and cold, at the back of his mind, to look at it. "Actually," Dan said, sounded normal. He was proud of that. "I think the wrong floor. I'm a vendor, dropping off some materials for the marketing team. Help you." He set the paper bag on the security counter. Reyes at it, then at him. "Marketing's on 6. Right, got it." Dan backing away. "Thanks." He walked out of the lobby before Reyes anything else. The September air hit him, warm, dry. The kind of Denver afternoon that makes you want to hike or beer on a patio, or do anything except stand on a sidewalk holding a receipt for chicken. In his car. A 2019 Subaru Outback, kind of car dads drive. He sat in the driver's seat and put his hands on the wheel and breathed. In, out, he thought. Mace was confused. Maybe the guy was a brother, a business partner. Maybe Victoria didn't know about. No, that was ridiculous. Met her family. Maybe Reyes was new. Her husband was a joke. The guy was her bodyguard. Maybe nothing. The laugh. The end every day. The way the man had walked through that longed there. Like he was. Dan started the car. He didn't go home. He drove around the block. Once, twice. And then he parked across and he waited. 3 minutes. And came back. He was still on the phone. He walked into the lobby, said something to Reyes. Reyes laughed and nodded and got on the elevator, put down the time. He didn't know why. It felt like the kind of thing you do when you're collecting evidence, even if you don't get what the evidence is for. He drove home, and Wash Park was quiet. Lily at school, Victoria at work, somewhere under the couch. Dan put on a load of... He walked the dog, a golden retriever named Murphy, who was too old for long walks but about the mailbox. He prepped the ingredients for dinner, salmon, asparagus, and rice Lily liked. He did all of it on autopilot, the way you do when your body knows the route is somewhere else. At Lily up from school. She talked the whole way home about a girl in her class who Angela for show and tell, and Dan listened and nodded and asked questions was, as far as Lily could, completely normal. At 6, Victoria came home. He kissed him on the cheek, quick, perfunctory. The way you kiss someone you've been married to for 9 years and haven't been with in longer than that. She smelled like perfume and airplane air on a plane. Day, she said, dropping her brief at the door. Back. Did you eat? Salmon. You're the best. She went upstairs. Dan heard the water start. The bathroom door clicked shut. He stood in the kitchen for a minute. Plate was in the oven, keeping warm. Murphy was snoring at his feet. And then, without deciding to, without planning it, the way you reach for a light switch and upstairs. Victoria's purse was on the bed. He'd never gone to it. Not once in 9 years. He'd always told himself he trusted her. That trust was the foundation. That if you started checking phones, you'd already lost. He unzipped the main compartment. Wallet, phone, gloss, a small book, a pen. He opened the wallet. Driver's license. Victoria Mercer, correct. Insurance cards. A few business cards. And then, side pocket. Eats. Credit card. He pulled it out. It was a Visa. The name embossed front. In rays. Vict Webb. Dan stared at it. Not Mercer. The shower was still running. Victoria was singing under the water. Off key. Dan turned the card over. The signature on this Victoria's. The name was Webb. The card wasn't new. The edges were slightly worn. The magnetic scratched from use. This card had been used. For a long time, he put it back. Zipped the purse. He went downstairs. Kitchen and looked at the thought. Husband. Victoria Webb. I see her husband every day. Lily called from the living room. Daddy, can we watch a movie before bed? Sure, Bug. Dan's steady. He was good at that. Steady. He'd spent years being steady. Pick whatever you want. He opened the oven. The salmon was perfect. Flaky, lemon bubbly how Victoria liked it. He put it on a plate. He set the table. He poured a glass and a glass of water for himself. And when she came down in her sweatpants, wet hair, no makeup, looking like married, the woman married, and said, "How was your day?" "Long," she said. "But good." Marcus closed the Anderson deal. The big one. Marcus, Dan. He kept his face neutral. "Your CFO?" "Yeah, he's good. I don't know what I'd do without him." She took a bite of salmon. It was amazing, as always. Dan sat down across from her. He picked up his fork. He didn't say anything about the security guard, the man in the charcoal, the credit card that said Webb. He ate his dinner. He listened to her talk the Anderson deal and the board meeting on Friday. And all the while, in the back of his mind, the cold fact was settling in and permanent, like a stint of still water. He wasn't the husband. And he hadn't been for a very long time. Dan didn't sleep that night. He lay next to Victoria in the dark, listening to her breathe, slow, even, the deep sleep of someone with nothing to hide, and he stared at the ceiling and thought about the name on the card. Webb, not Mercer. Webb. At 3 a.m, he got up. He went to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and sat at the table with his phone. He typed Marcus Webb Denver into the search bar. LinkedIn. Marcus Webb, Chief Financial Officer at Hale Mercer Group. Education. University of Colorado Boulder. Previous, Ernst & Young. Skills. Financial modeling, mergers and acquisitions, strategic planning. The profile picture was the man from the lobby. Same broad shoulders, same charcoal suit, same expression of quiet authority. Dan scrolled down. Relationship status. Married. Spouse. Not listed by name, but there was a photo. Marcus at a charity gala, arm around a woman in a red dress. The woman was Victoria. She was laughing. Her hand was on his chest. The caption read, "With my wife at the Denver Children's Hospital gala." Dan set the phone down on the table. The screen went dark. He sat in the kitchen for a long time, the water getting warm in his hand. And he thought about all the nights Victoria had said, charity gala, and work event, and board dinner. All the nights he'd stayed home with Lily, told her mommy's work, felt proud of his wife, the CEO, the woman who was going places. She had been going places. Just not. At 7, Lily came downstairs. She wanted cereal. He asked her about the tarantula girl from yesterday. He packed. He brushed her. He did all of it the way he always did. Steady, present, there. And Lily didn't notice. After drop-off, he called. "Hey. What's up? You never called." Dan was sitting in his car in the school parking lot. "The engine off. And I need you to not ask questions until I'm done." "Okay. That sounds serious." Told him. Everything. The sick guard. The man named Marcus. The credit card Webb. The LinkedIn photo. He said it fast, like ripping off bandage, and when he was done, there was a long silence. Theo's voice quiet. Are you sure? I mean, the guard could have been confused. The card could be Theo. Her name is Victoria Webb on that card. She's been using it for God knows how long. And there's a photo of her with this guy at a gala, captioned wife. I didn't mention any of it. Silence. Then, at my office. Get over here. Figure this out. Theo parked. Yay. He had an office in a brick building on Platt Street, a coffee shop, and he knew things about money and credit and paper trails that Dan didn't want to know, but was suddenly bored. Dan sat across from him while Theo pulled up credit monitoring computer. She's your wife, Theo said. You're authorized for credit report. Joint accounts, shared address, it's legal. I just need you to confirm this. Do it, Theo typed. Screen loaded. Credit report appeared. Victoria Mercer, clean, good score, normal accounts, mortgage, car, 2 credit cards. And then, at the bottom, file. There, Theo said. He pointed. Victoria Webb, different address, P.O. box in Aurora, opened 3 years ago. 1 credit card, an auto loan, 1... He stopped. Lease, apartment, 2 angle. 2 miles from her office, Dan said. Yeah, Theo looked at him. Dan, this isn't a fling. This is a whole other identity, a whole other life. She's been building 3 years minimum. Felt his hands go cold. The apartment address? At the address on the lease, but the tenant name, Marcus Webb. Put it under his name. Use her the emergency contact. That way under hers. Dan's voice was flat. He was thinking clearly now. The way you think when the shock has burned off and what's left is hard fact. She's careful. She's been careful for 3 years. Theo got the address. 14th Avenue, apartment 7B, Golden Triangle. 2 miles from the office, a 12-minute drive. Spent the rest of the morning there. He parked across the street, visitor spot by a coffee shop, watched the building. It was a modern loft building, glass, concrete, the kind professionals lived. The lobby had a keypad and concierge desk. At 12:05, Victoria's pulled into the underground garage. Dan knew her car, a black Tesla, the one she'd leased last year. For work. He watched the license to the garage. 10 minutes later, Marcus's car, a dark BMW. From the LinkedIn photos backed in behind it. Dan sat in his Subaru, garage door closed. He thought about Lily at school, about the salmon from last night, about the way Victoria had kissed him on the "You're the best." He thought about the word wife and how it could mean 2 different things to 2 different people and how nobody had told him there was a second definition. His hands started shaking. Dramatic movie kind of shake. Just a fine tremor. The kind that starts in your face its way up your arms. He gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. He breathed in, out, in, out. He did scream. He just sat there, in a 2 miles from his wife's other life, and its course. At 1:50, car came out of the garage. She was alone. She turned left toward the office. Marcus's car followed fire. Dan wrote down the times. He always wrote down the times. It was the graphic designer in him. Documentation, keeping track of the details. He drove home. He let Murphy out in the backyard. He stood on the patio and looked at the garden, the tomato plants he'd put in May, basil that was doing surprisingly well. The drank coffee in the morning. This was his life. This house, this yard, this dog, this daughter. And 12 minutes away, in a glass loft on 14th Avenue, there was another version, another husband, another name. That night at dinner, he said, "What's Marcus doing? The CF. You mentioned him the other night." Victoria didn't look at her plate. "Fine. Busy. Why?" "Just curious." "You talk about him." "I realized I've never actually met him." "The holiday party to go?" "I don't think did." Dan kept his voice. "I was Lily, remember? Had the flu." "Oh, right." Victoria took a sip of wine. "Well, he's good. He's my CFO, Dan. I see him every day. It's not interesting. It's work," Dan said. He didn't push. He ate his dinner. He cleared the plates, bath, and read her a story and tucked her in. And when Victoria was in the shower, on the bed, and he pulled up Theo had sent him, the lease agreement, the one Theo had found through a public word search, and the line at the bottom, emergency contact, Victoria, relationship, life. He locked his phone. He put face down on the nightstand. He lay in the dark, next to his sleep, and he thought, 3 years. She's been someone else's wife for 3 years. And I never noticed. Dan started collecting, not obsessively. He was methodical about it. the way he was methodical about everything. He bought a small notebook, the kind with a hard cover and an elastic band, and he wrote in it every night after Lily was asleep, and Victoria was either in the shower or already asleep. September 12th. Victoria said board dinner, home by 9, came home at 11:20. Car had 14.2 extra miles. Office to house is 8.4. Difference, 5.8. Golden Triangle apartment is 2.0 from office. Round trip 4.0. Extra 1.8. Probably parking, circling, September 14th. Working late, left office at 6:10. Drove to 14th Ave, stayed until 9:40. Came home at 10:05. Smelled like someone else's shampoo. September 16th. Marcus's car at the apartment from 6 to midnight. Victoria's car there from 6:05 to 11:50. He took photos. Not with his phone. He bought a cheap digital camera at a pawn shop. Paid cash, no trail. He photographed the apartment building, the cars in the garage, Victoria and Marcus entering and leaving. He kept the camera in the glove box of the Subaru under a blanket. He saved the credit card statement. Theo had pulled them. 3 years of charges, all on the Victoria web card. Restaurants, the Capitol Grill, Rio, Elways, hotels, the Brown Palace, the St. Regis Asp, a place in jewelry, a Tiffany's receipt for $4,200, a watch from a boutique in Lodo for $8,800. She's been living large on that. Theo said. They were in his office. The statements spread across the desk. And the payments? They're coming from a business. Hale Mercer Group. She's expensing. She's using company money to fund her other Dan's voice was, looks it. And Marcus is signing off on it. He's CFO. He controls the account. Theo leaned back in his. Dan, this is more than this is embezzlement, be. Odd. If the board. I don't care about. Dan picked up the Tiffany's. A necklace. He'd never seen Victoria wear a necklace from. She wore the small diamond studs he'd given her for their 5th anniversary. Every day. Like a uniform. I care about daughter. And I care about not being played for a fool for one. He told Theo everything night. The whole thing. The lobby, the guard, the card, the apartment. Theo listened, and when Dan was done, he poured them both a whiskey. What do you want to do? I don't know, Dan said. And that's the truth. He'd spent 2 weeks collecting evidence, and he still didn't want it. Revenge? Justice? A confession? An apology? He wanted to wake up and find out in a dream. He wanted Victoria to look him in the eye. Truth. Once. You do, said. Don't confront her alone. Not yet. You need a plan. Dan nodded. But that night, at dinner, Victoria was on her line. She'd been in a mood all evening. The Anderson deal she'd said. And there was talk of a promotion for Marcus. She was talking with her hands, animated, the way she got when she was at work. And Dan was walking. This is the one. This version, bright, engaged. This him. What does she give me? The tired version? Preoccupied version. The version that kisses my cheek and says, you're the best. Useful. Work. Victoria. Is there anything you want to tell me? She looked up. Her fork way to her mouth. What do you mean? Anything. About work. About anything. He kept his face neutral. Just this in the mirror. I just feel like we really talked in a while. And I want a. Victoria set down her fork. She looked at him. Really looked. The way she looked at people when she was assessing them, calculating what they didn't. She smiled. The warm, reassuring smile, the one that had gotten her through things. Dan, everything's fine. More than fine. The company's growing. Great, She reached his hand. We're fine. You worry too much. Is this about the lunch thing? You never did bring me that lunch you texted about. I was looking forward to it. He'd forgotten. He'd texted her that morning. Bringing surprise. He'd never gone up. He'd left the chicken salad guard who'd laughed at him. Busy, he said. See, you get busy, you overthink. We're fine. She squeezed his hand. He let her hold his hand. He didn't pull away. He said, you too, because it was what you said. Because in the next room doing homework. Because if he didn't say it, the whole house wasn't ready yet. He went for a walk. Murphy pulled him down the street, sniffing at fire hydrants, thought about what Theo had said. Don't confront her. You need a plan. But the only one he could talk to. He stopped walking. Sat down, panting, him like he was crazy. Marcus Webb. The other husband. The man who thought he was Victoria's only husband. The man whose name was on the lease. Whose signature was on the credit card payments. Whose LinkedIn said, already married. Dan pulled out his phone. He'd saved Marcus's number. It was on the Hale Mercer under executive team. Message. Deleted it. Another. Did that too. Then he wrote, I know about Victoria. I know the apartment. I know about Vegas. You think the single? Tomorrow. Noon. The coffee shop on 17th Welton. Come on. He didn't sign it. He hit send. The message went. A second late. Delivered. Then read. Dan put the phone in his pocket. He stood on the sidewalk in the dark, Murphy tugging at the and he waited. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again, disappeared. Who is? Dan typed back. No, tomorrow, noon, late. His phone. He walked home. He didn't know if Marcus would show up, know if Marcus would call Victoria. He didn't know if he was about to up or just make it. But he knew one thing. He was done being the only one in the dark. Marcus showed up at noon. Dan was already there, sitting at a corner table, back to the wall, coffee getting cold, watching the door. The coffee shop on 17th and Welton was busy. Downtown lunch rush, laptops, business casual. The kind of place where nobody pays attention to 2 men having a quiet conversation. Marcus walked in at 12:02. He was wearing the charcoal suit again. He scanned the room, saw Dan, and walked over. He didn't sit down right away. He stood there, looking at Dan, and Dan could see the assessment happening. The same thing Victoria did, the quick calculation of threat level and information asymmetry. You're the one who texted, Marcus said. Sit down. Marcus sat. He signaled the barista for a coffee. Then he looked at Dan again, longer this time, and something shifted in his face. Recognition, not of Dan, of the situation. You're her husband, Marcus said. Not a question. Dan Mercer. Dan held out his hand. Marcus didn't take. 9 years. 1 daughter, Lily. She's 8. Marcus's jaw tightened. She told me she was divorced. She said her ex was irresponsible. Couldn't hold a job. Drank too much. She said the divorce was final 3 years. Dan pulled a folder from his bag and slid it across the table. Our marriage license. County records. Still active. No divorce filing. Marcus stared at the other. He didn't. His cough lived. He didn't. The apartment on 14th, said. You've been there 3 years. She's there 3-4 nights a week. She tells me she's sweet. She tells you she's, what? At a business dinner? Visit mother? She said her mother lived in Boulder and she visited Marcus's voice. Her mother lives in Stale. Met her. Because there is no mother in Boulder. Because she doesn't have time for a mother in Boulder when she's got a husband and a daughter. Dan leaned forward. I'm not here to you, Marcus. I'm here because we're both being played. By the same woman, and I think you do. Marcus was quiet for a long time. His coffee. Out the window. Then he said, Want from me. The truth. Starters, how long? Did it start? Marcus told him. It was cool the way he said it. Like he was rules. They'd started sleeping 4 years ago. When CFO. It had at first. She'd told he was separated on the divorce. 6 months in, she'd said divorce was final. 3 years ago, they'd gone to Vegas company retreat and gotten married on the Strip. He romantic. She'd said it was just us, no paperwork hassle, or later. She never filed the marriage license, said. Did she? Marcus will. What? Think about it. She's married to me. If she filed a marriage license, Melanie. She told you she filed it, but she didn't, because she can't. Dan pulled paper from the folder. Record search. No marriage license for Victoria Hale or Webb in Nevada, ever. Shedding Marcus. In a chapel, and it wasn't real. Marcus put his head in his hands. Away for a full minute. The coffee noise swirled around them. Espresso machines, conversations, and closing. And he looked up. His eyes were red. Why are you telling me this? To gloat? To say, told you so? No. Dan's voice was steady. I'm telling you because she's the same thing to both of us. And because... Swallowed. Because if to each other she wins. She gets to keep both lives, husbands, both versions, and neither of us the full truth. Marcus. Then he said, I love her. Back in his chest. Surprise, he dictated it. But hearing it, from the man who'd been sleeping with his wife for 4 years, sit across from him in a coffee shop, was abstract. No, Dan said. She's good at making people love her. She's good at making you feel like the only person in the room. I know. Then you understand why I can't just... Marcus gestured vaguely. I can't team up with you. I'm sorry. I need to hear it from her. Marcus? No. Marcus stood up. He dropped her bill on the table for the coffee. I appreciate you telling me, but this is between me and Vic. And frankly, he looked down at Dan. If you'd been, maybe none of this would have happened. You were her husband. You lived with her. How did you not? The question hit like a fist. Dan opened his mouth to answer. This was already walking away. He pushed through and was gone. Dan sat there. The $5 bill fluttered slightly in the AC. The coffee was cold. And Marcus's question, how did you not know? Because I didn't want to know, Dan thought. Because knowing would mean this conversation, this folder, this life falling apart. Because not knowing was easier. Because I chose not to see. Drove home. He didn't go inside right away. He sat in the driveway, and he thought about Marcus's face. The red eyes, the head in. The man had been played Sam, and instead of joining forces, he'd run back to the woman. He understood. He really did. He went inside. Victoria was home early. She was in the kitchen, pouring a glass of wine, and when she saw him, she smiled. Hey, where were you? I'd calling, out, thinking, what? Dan set his bed on the counter. The folds inside. He could feel it through the leather. The medicines, the public records, lease. He could right now. He could get all on the table. He could say the words, I know about Marcus. I know about the apartment. I know about Vegas. He said, I know about Victoria didn't falter. Not even a little. Marcus, my CO? What about him? Victoria. His voice was quieter than he intended. Thing where you act like you don't know what. Dan, you're scaring. She her wine glass. Her face shifted. The perfect masked, worried wife. What's going on? Did something happen at work? Did someone say something to you? I went to your office 2 weeks ago with your lunch. The security guard. Yes, he thought I was lost, he said, and I quote, I spend every day. And then did at Marcus. Dan's voice was steady now. He was looking. So don't stand there and ask on. You know exactly what's going on. For half a second, just something flickered behind Victoria's eyes. Panic, maybe, or calculate. Then it was gone, replaced by something harder. You went to my office. Her voice was cold now. The was off. You spied on me? Dan, that's okay. That's invasive. Marcus is my business partner. We work together. We have meetings. We have dinners with clients. If some security joke, it wasn't. He pointed at him. He said, there he is. And I found the credit card. Victoria Webb apartment, and the lease where you're listed as his wife. Dan's voice was despite himself. How long have you been his wife? Victoria stared at him. And then she laughed. Not a big laugh, a sharper sound. You've been going through my things? My wallet? You've been stalking me, Dan, following me, taking pictures. Do you hear yourself? This isn't healthy. This is... I think you're having a breakdown. She picked up her phone. I think the stress of the freelance work and taking... You, Dan, I've noticed. And now you're venting this whole about Marcus and me because you can't handle... Don't. Dan's voice was now. Don't do that. Don't make me the problem. But she was already doing it. She was already calling someone. Her... Or a friend. And Dan could hear her saying, I'm one. He's so much pressure. He's saying these things. And he realized, with a cold clarity that made his stomach, that she was faster than him. She was already managing the narrative, already telling people he was already building the case that Dan Mercer was a man having a... By that weekend, 3 people had called him, his sister, a college friend, even Lily, teacher. You've been going through a hard time. I just want in. Each time, Dan said he was fine. Each time he hung up and thought, she's good. She's really, really good. And on Sunday night, Marcus texted him. One line I talked to her. She said, you're obsessed. That you months. I don't know what. Don't contact me again. Dan stared at the message. He thought about the coffee the red eyes, the head and hands. And he thought she got to him. Of course she did. She always does. He was alone, completely alone. And she was winning. The next 2 weeks were the longest of Dan's life. Victoria didn't leave. She didn't ask him to leave. She just kept living. She made coffee in the morning, kissed Lily goodbye, went to work, came home, poured wine, asked about Dan's projects, and acted like the conversation in the kitchen had never happened. But she changed things. Small things. The kind of changes you make when you're covering tracks. Her phone was always face down now. She changed the passcode on her laptop. She started taking her purse everywhere, even into the bathroom. She asked Dan casually if he'd been feeling okay lately, and when he said yes, she said, good, because I've been worried about you, and I think maybe you should talk to someone. She was building a fire. Dan knew it. He could feel it. The slow, steady construction of a case. Dan Mercer, depressed, unstable, paranoid. A man who'd invented an affair between his wife and her CFO because he couldn't handle her success. It was the kind of narrative that would hold up in court, in a custody hearing, in a divorce. He mentioned it to She's preparing, Thea said. They were in his office, the door closed, the shades. If she files for divorce, and she will, she's going to argue you're mentally full custody, the house, most of the assets. And with her money and her lawyers and her concerned wife, she might. Can't. I have the credit card, the apartment, the evidence of what? An affair? Adultery isn't a crime in Colorado. It doesn't automatically give you custody. And the bigamy stopped. Had confirmed it. The Vegas marriage, you said she never filed license. But she did, if there's a legal marriage to Marcus. But proving it, using it, that means police, courts, criminal proceedings. That's a thing. I know. Damped his face. I don't want a prison. I want my daughter. I want to not be married to a woman who had 2 lives. He stopped. I want it to be over. It was quiet. Then he said, something else. I've been looking at the company finances, the Hale Merger Group books.
Public filings, mostly. They're a private company, but they have some investors, so there's disclosure. And?
There are payments. Large ones. Going through an account Marcus controls to a shell company in Delaware. Webb Holdings. Theo looked at him. Webb, her other name. She's been funneling money out of the company, through Marcus, into an account she controls. For 3 years, Anne felt the floor shift. How much? Last year alone? $480,000. Over 3 years? $0.2 million. From her own company. She's stealing from her investors, her employees, her retirement fund. She's using Marcus to do it. He's signing the transfers. If this comes out, he goes down too. He can prove he didn't know. Theo leaned forward. Dan, this is leverage. Real leverage. If she tries to take Lily, if she tries to free you can... I know. Dan stood up. He paced the office. I know what I can do, but I don't want to threaten her. I don't want to be that guy. You don't have a choice, Dan. She's already that guy. She's already building the case that you're crazy. She's already planning to take... You need to be ready. Dan was still thinking about it when his phone buzzed. An unknown number. A text. This is Priya, Victoria's assistant. We need to meet. I know. I think you need to hear them. He stared at the message. Priya Nair, 28, Victoria's executive assistant. Dan had met her twice, at a company picnic. She'd been quiet, efficient, always hovering near Victoria's tablet and a calm expression. He texted, how did you get my number? Victoria has in her contacts. Saw your name. Please. The park. He looked at Theo. Her assistant wants to talk. Go. Be careful. She wasn't bait. Priya was sitting on a bench wearing jeans and a hoodie, usual office uniform. She looked nervous. She kept checking her phone. When Dan sat down, she didn't say hello, just opened her bag and pulled out a folder. I shouldn't be doing this, she said. If she finds out, I'll lose my job, my visa, everything, but I can't nothing. Not when I know what planning. What is planning? Priya handed him the folder. Inside were printed emails, schedules, a document titled Personal Matters. She's reading the company, Priya said. Moving assets, putting everything in Webb Holdings. L company. She's cutting you out completely. The house, savings, Lily's, and it's being moved. She stopped, swallowed. There's a psychological evaluation. She had a Dr. Hargrove. He's never met you. But he wrote a report saying you exhibit paranoid ideation and attachment instability, based on what Victoria told him. She's going to use it for custody, full custody. She's going to say you're a danger to Lily. Went cold. Dr. Hargrove. Patient's wife reports persistent beliefs regarding infidelity. Patient exhibits bullying behavior. Supervised visitation only. She had a doctor. This about me. Without me. Voice was hollow. I know. Priya's eyes were. I typed it. She dictated it. I didn't to do. I've been her assistant for 2 years. I've seen things, the apartment, the way she talks, the husband, the dead weight. She calls you that. To Marcus, to me. The dead weight. Dan closed the folder. He sat very still. The park was beautiful. October, gold leaves, blue sky, playground. And somewhere in that beauty, life was systematically destroying his life. Why are you? He said. Because I have a... Priya's voice. She's 4. And if someone did this to me, if someone tried to take my child because I would help me. She stood up. That's everything. The emails, the schedule, the evaluation. I have more. On my work computer, encrypted. If you need it, text this number. But I can't meet again. Not in person. She's watching. She's away. Dan sat on the boulder in his lap, and he watched the leaves fall. He drove home. Go inside. He in the driveway and Theo. She's taking thing, Dan said. The money, the house, my daughter. Got a fake site. She's got... Dan. Theo. She's going to take... and I can't... There was a long silence. Then Theo said, then you need to stop reacting. You need to plan, and you need to before she does. Hung up. He sat in the car. He thought about Lily. Her laugh, her drawings, Addie, like it was the most important word in the world. He thought about the psych eval, citation only. He thought the one to tuck her in again. He got out of the car. Went inside. Victoria was in the kitchen. She was on the phone, laughing about something. Saw him, I'll call you back. Up. Hey, she said. Where have you been? I was worried. Didn't answer. Up the stairs, bedroom. He opened the... He pulled out a suitcase. Started packing his clothes. Dan? Victoria door. What are you doing? Leaving? Where are you? Not permanently, yet. He zipped the suit. But I'm not staying in the house while you build a case, daughter. I'm to Theo's. Taking Lily. Victoria's face changed. The mask cracked. For the first time, Dan saw it. Real fear. Not concern, not performance. Fear. Can't take her. She has school. I'll take her to school. I'll pick her up. I'll do what I do. I just won't sleep at the same house as the woman trying to destroy. He picked up case. And Victoria? What? I know about holdings. I know about the 1.2 million. About Dr. Hargrove. And I have proof. So try to stop me. What happens if I take that proof to your board? He walked past her. Down the stairs. To the door, he didn't look back. Theo's house was in Stapleton, a new subdivision with wide streets and identical front yards, and a golden retriever named Biscuit, who was roughly the same age and energy level as Murphy. The two dogs became instant friends, which was good, because Dan and Lily were going to be there a while. Lily took it well, better than Dan had expected. Are we having a sleepover at Uncle Theo's? She'd asked, and Dan had said something like that, and she'd said, cool, and run off to play with Biscuit. Kids, Dan thought. They accept chaos if you frame it right. Theo's wife, Maya, made tacos. She didn't ask questions. She just set an extra place at the table and handed Lily a juice box and said, your room's all set up, sweetie. And Dan wanted to cry because nobody had ever been that kind to him without wanting something in return. That first night, Dan lay on the couch in Theo's living room and stared at the ceiling and thought, this is what it feels like to be homeless. Not literally. He had a roof, a friend, a daughter sleeping down the hall. But the house on Wash Park, the one he'd picked out with Victoria, the one where Lily had taken her first step, that house was no longer his. Not really. Victoria was in it, and she was changing the locks. He found out the next morning. He'd driven back to get some of Lily's things, her favorite stuffed animal, a stack of books, the art supplies she used every afternoon. The front door wouldn't open. He tried the key. It turned, but the deadbolt was engaged from the inside. He rang the... Nobody came. He called Victoria. It went to voice. He stood on the porch of his own house, holding a duffel. She changed the... While I was sleeping on it, while Lily was in a strange room, she changed the locks. He texted her. I need Lily's. The door... She texted back 10 minutes. I had the locks changed for... You can come by when I'm home. Tomorrow, maybe. I'm busy today. 30. She'd changed the locks for security. Like he threat. Yo. She looked back. Not alone. I'll come with you tomorrow. And Dan? Check your bank account. Dan checked. The joint checking account was frozen. His debit card was declined at the station. The savings account, the one they'd opened for Lily's college, emptied. Transferred to an account he'd recognize. He sat Subaru in the parking lot of Uber's. And he looked at the screen of his phone, 0. What? This is what it means to... She didn't just have their life. She was erasing this one. His name off the accounts. His key out of the door. His reputation as a father. All of it, methodically. The way she reared a company. Theo covered the groceries. Maya covered Lily's school supplies. Dan design clients, the small ones, local businesses, still paid him. But the checks went to a joint account. He had to call each one, explain the situation, ask them to send pay account. It was humiliating, but it was necessary. He wasn't answering. Dan had texted him 3 times since the coffee shop, about web holdings, about the money, about the fact that Victoria too. No response. Dan didn't know if Marcus was scared or stupid, or if Victoria had gotten to him. Everyone. Alone. He knew that. Theo was there. Maya was there. Priya. But the person who'd on his side, he'd married, the person who'd promised better or worse than this. And there was no manual for that. No action booklet for, your wife has 2 husbands. On the 4th night, Theo brought him a beer and sat next to him. I've been thinking, Theo said, about the bigamy. If she's legally married to both of you, she's not. I told you, no Nevada marriage lens. She staged it, right, but the credit, the apartment, the web identity, the company money, that's fraud, Dan, real fraud. And if you take that to the DA, taking it to the DA, down his beer. I do that, she goes to prison. And then Lily grows up without a mother, and in the next 10 years in court, testifying, reliving it. And Lily hates me for it. I can't do that to her. Then what? You let her win? No. Dan looked at his friend. Not to put her, to make her deal. Out of this marriage, fine. She wants her other life, fine. But she gives me Lily, full custody, the house, a fair settlement. And she never comes near me again. If she doesn't, the board gets the web holdings file. The investors get the frauders. She loses everything. The company, the money, the reputation, all of it, Theo. Then old Dan. Dan took a drink. I've been warm for 9 years. Look where it got me. They heard a sound. Lily in the hallway, half asleep, holding her stuff bit. Dan had a bad dream, stood up. He picked her up. She was getting too big, 8 years old and long-legged, still fit in his arms, just barely, carried her back to the guest room. He sat on the bed and held her, and, is Mommy coming to get me? He said, no, Bug, with Daddy. It's okay. She fell asleep in his arms. He there in the dark, listening to her breathe, thought about what said. Old. Maybe. But what was the alternative? Warm and losing everything? Warm and losing her? His phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. Priya. She's meeting with her lawyer tomorrow. 9 a.m. The firm is on 17th Street. She's filing for divorce. Emergency custody. She's using the hall. You have 20 hours, Dan. Maybe less. He stared at the message. 24 hours. She was filing. Emergency custody. The psych eval. In 24 hours, could decide that Dan Mercer was unfit. That Lily should stay with Victoria. That Dan should only see her. Supervise. Room with a social worker taking notes. He thought about the in his bag. The credit card statements. The lease. The web holdings recs. The Hargrove eval. Prinels. He thought about Marcus not answering. He thought about Victoria in there behind new locks. Take his daughter. Stood Priya back. Thank you. I know what to do. Then he texted Marcus. One more time. Not pleading. Not angry. Just, she's cutting you out too. The equity restructuring. Web holdings. You're being erased, same as me. If you don't believe me, ask her why she's been meeting with lawyers without you. Tomorrow at 9, I can prove it. Meet me at the coffee shop on 17th, 8 a.m. Don't wait. This is your last chance. He put the phone down. He looked at Lily, asleep, her hand still clutching the ring. He kissed her forehead. 24 hours. He had 24 hours to build a case, find and stop the woman who'd been for years. He didn't sleep. Marcus was at the coffee shop at 7:50. Dan had been there since 7:30. He'd brought the folder, the full one, not the abridged version he'd shown Marcus the first time. Credit card statements, lease agreement, Web Holdings Incorporation documents, the equity restructuring schedule Priya had sent, the Hargrove evaluation, everything. Marcus sat down. He looked like he hadn't slept. His suit was wrinkled. He had a coffee in his hand that he hadn't drunk. Talk, Marcus said. Dan slid the folder across the table. She's meeting her lawyer at 9, filing for divorce. Emergency custody. She's using a fake psych eval to say I'm unfit. And he tapped the equity document. She's restructuring the company. Moving assets to Web Holdings. Your name's on the transfers, Marcus. You're the one signing. When this comes... You're the one who goes down for fraud. Not... She'll say you did it without her knowledge. She'll throw you under the bus and keep... Marcus flipped through the documents. His face got paler with each... When he got to the equity stool, the one that showed his shares being diluted, his voting rights reduced, his position as CFO being restored, She's firing me, Mark said. Lee, she's harming you. She used you for the signatures, for the credibility, for the husband. And now that she's got what she wants, the money, power, the She's cutting you. Dan leaned forward. I told you in this coffee shop 2 weeks ago that we were both You didn't believe me. You ran back to her. Now look. Mark quiet. He stared at the actual. Then he said, I asked her lawyers last night. She said it was routine stuff. She said I was looked up. For the first time saw it. The anger, ill, but the same cold clarity Dan had felt in the King Super. The moment you stop hoping. What do you want? Marcus said. Same thing you want. To not be destroyed by her. To get out with what's ours. Dan paused. I'm not going to the police. I'm not to the DA. I don't want her in prison. I want a deal. Full custody of Lily, the house. A fair financial settlement. She leaves me alone. Forever. And me? You get your shares. Your reputation. A clean exit from the company. And Dan looked at him. The truth. About Vegas. About the marriage that wasn't real. You deserve that at least. Marcus quiet for a long time. The coffee noise swirled around them. Somewhere, barista called out a name. Okay, Marcus said. What do you need me to do? First, don't go to that lawyer meeting. You text her right now and say you're sick. You can't make it. I asked time. Second, get me the internal financials. One's not in the public filings. The full web holdings trail. The account number, transfer date. Third, Dan Mall digital recorder. When she calls you, when she explains, when she admits, you legally, call already consent state. You can record you're part of. Marcus took the recorder. He turned it over in his hand. I've thought about this. 9 years to think about it. Didn't know I was thinking. Plan. Marcus texted Victoria. Food poisoning. Can't make the meeting. Reschedule? Victor texted back. Are you okay? Do you need anything? Marcus showed Dan the text. They both looked at it. The care, the performance. That, Dan said. She makes you feel like she cares. Right up the moment she doesn't need you anymore. Marcus texted. I'll be fine. Just rest. By 2. Access the internal server. He sent Dan the full web holdings file. Count numbers, transfer logs, email chains between Victoria and his registered agent. It was worse than Theo had estimated. Not 1, 2.4. Over 3 years, Victoria had funneled almost $2 million out of her own company. Through Marcus's signatures, only she controlled. She's been planning her exit, Theo said, the numbers that afternoon. The divorce, the custody, the company. She's been building this for years. She was always going to leave you, Dan. She was just waiting to do it on her terms. Dan felt something settle in his chest. Not sadness, not anger, a kind of acceptance. Of course she was. Of course the woman who could maintain 2 husbands for years could plan a divorce just as long. A placeholder. A prop. The stable home life that made her look good to investors and employees community. By 5, had recorded 2 conversations. It was Victoria calling to check him. Sick. Can I bring you anything? And then, when Marcus asked about the restructuring, her voice shifting. It's just a routine adjustment, Marcus. Don't worry about it. I'll handle it. The second was longer. Marcus pressed. I saw the schedule, Victoria. Chairs are being cut in half. What's going on? And Victoria, after a pause. You've been distracted lately. I need someone more focused. Business, Marcus. Don't take it personally. Don't take it personally. The same thing she'd said to Dan 100 times. It's work. It's business. Don't be sensitive. By 8, Dan had a lawyer. Theo's cousin. A family law attorney named Karen Wu. Sharp. Tired. Had heard every version of MySpace and knew how to spot the real ones. Dan showed her everything. The bigamy-adjacent deception. The web identity. The financial fraud. The fake eval. Karen read through it all. When she was done, Dan over her reading glasses and said, You have your weapon, Mr. Mercer. The question is, do you want to use it, or do you use the threat of it? The threat, Dan said. I want her to agree. Voluntarily, no trial, no custody battle, no putting Lily through it. Then we don't file first. We make her, and we make it clear what happens if she refuses. Aaron pulled out a notepad. Here's what. By 10 that night, the offer was drafted. Full legal and physical custody of Lily to Dan, house to Dan, in lieu of spousal support. A one-time settlement, $150,000 from Victoria to Dan, marital assets minus what she'd already taken. Victoria gets supervised visitation with Lily, 4 hours a month in a public place with Dan present. No contact between Dan and Victoria except through lawyers. And, the kicker, Victoria resigns as CEO of Hale Mercer Group within 6, and the Web Holdings funds are returned company. She'll never agree to the resignation, Marcus said. The conference call. Dan, Karen, Marcus. It was almost midnight. She will if the alternative is the board finding out about $2.4 million fraud, Karen said. This isn't a negotiation. It's a choice. She can lose the company quietly, or she can publicly and go to prison. Most people choose quiet. Dan thought. He thought about Lily, a next room. He thought about the house. The locks changed, his key useless. He thought about Victoria in that house, alone, next move. His phone. He typed a message to Victoria. He didn't hesitate. He didn't soften it. We need to talk, tomorrow, 10 a.m. The house. Bring your lawyer. I'll bring mine. We're settling this. If you don't, or if you file for emergency custody before then, the board gets the Web Holdings file by noon. The investors get the fraud numbers. The press the story about the CEO with 2 husbands. You have until 10. Don't be late. He hit send. Read. Disappeared. You're making a mistake, he typed back. I've been making a mistake for 9. To my stop. He turned off the phone. He lay on the couch. He closed his eyes. Tomorrow it would be over, one way or another. The house on Wash Park smelled different. Dan noticed it the moment he walked in. Karen Wu beside him. Theo in the car outside with Lily. Marcus waiting in a coffee shop 2 blocks away. The house smelled like Victoria's perfume and takeout Thai food and something else. Emptiness, maybe. The absence of a child's laughter, of a dog's nails on hardwood, of a husband's coffee mug on the counter. Victoria was in the living room. She was wearing a gray blazer and slacks, her business uniform. Her lawyer sat next to her on the couch, a man in a navy suit, red tie, the kind of lawyer who charged $600 an hour and looked like he knew it. Dan, Victoria said. Her voice was cool, controlled. This is Arnold Pine, I know who he is. Dan sat down in the armchair. Karen sat next to him. We don't need introductions. We need to settle. Arnold Pine leaned forward. Before we begin, my client wants it on record that she finds these proceedings coercive, that she believes you're attempting to blackmail her with the truth. Dan pulled the folder from his bag. He set it on the coffee table. Open. The Web Holdings documents were on top. The account numbers, the transfer logs, the $2.4 million. This isn't blackmail, Mr. Pine. This is evidence that your client has been defrauding her own company for 3 years. Evidence that she created a false identity, Victoria Webb, to facilitate that. Evidence that she maintained a second fraudulent marriage to my client's business partner to cover it. Victoria's face didn't move, but Arnold Pine did. He reached for the... He started. His jaw... He flipped. He looked at... Then back at the documents. Then at Victoria again. Yeah, Pine said. It's... Vic said, her voice sharp. This is a divorce procedure. It's very relevant, Karen said. She's calm, the way Dan had seen her be on the phone then. The calm of someone who knows she holds the... If these documents are authentic, and they are, my client has verified them through multiple sources, then your client is exposed to criminal securities fraud, embezzlement, POSCO, and the civil implications, well... Pine said her. He looked at Victoria. He said something. Victoria her head. Pine something else. Victoria said no. Pine said Victoria. Victoria went quiet. Dan watched. He'd seen Victoria do this 100 times. The silent negotiation, power struggle, the way she tried to control even. But this time working. Dan was scared. And when a 600-an-hour lawyer is scared, they fast. Here's the offer, Karen said. She slid a document across the table. Full legal and physical custody of Lily Mercer and Neil Mercer. The marital residence at 1428 South Franklin Street, Mercer. A one-time settlement of $250,000. Supervised visitation for Ms. Mercer. 4 hours per month, public location, Mercer present. No direct contact between the parties except through counsel. And Ms. Mercer agrees to step down as CEO of Hale Mercer Group within 6 months, with the Webb Holdings Fund. Pine picked up the document. He read it, to Victoria. A moment. Take it, Karen said. Pine and Victoria kitchen. Dan could hear them, not but the tones. Victoria's voice sharp and insistent. Pine's lower, firmer. The sound of a woman who thought she was in control wasn't. 5 came back. Victoria's face was like stone. Counteroffer, Pine said. Custody, joint, 50-50. House, sold, proceeds split. Settlement, $100,000. Visitation, unsupervised every other weekend. And the resignation, no, not negotiable. Looked at Karen. Looked at Dan. Dan nodded. Karen stood up. She picked up the folder. Then we're done here. Mr. Mercer, I'll call the board of Hale Mercer Group. We'll have these by... Wait. Victoria stood up. Cracked just slightly. Wait, don't... Then you accept terms, Karen said. She didn't sit down. Held the folder like a weapon. All of them. Or we walk. And you spend the next 5 years in court, and possibly prison, and your daughter grows up visiting you on Titian. The room was silent. Dan looked at Victoria, really looked at her. The woman he'd married. The woman who'd laughed at his bad jokes and held his hand when his mother died and gave birth to his daughter, and then, somehow, along the way, come someone else. Someone who could do this, who could maintain 2 lives and 2 husbands and a fraud and a fake psyche val like he was the problem. Victoria. Dan. His voice was quiet. I don't want to do this. I don't want to destroy you. I want to be done. I want Lily to have a mother. Even mother I thought she was. But I can't share her with someone who would use her as a weapon. Can't. So sign, or don't. But if you don't, Karen calls, and you know what happens then? Victoria looked at him. Long time. And then, slowly, like each word, she said, we go back, Dan. I'll leave Marcus. I'll fix the company. We can be a family again. For Lily, no. Dan's voice was steady. I'm not negotiating to go back. I'm negotiating to leave. There's a difference. But you of all people would understand that. Victoria's face crumpled. For a second, then the mask back. Colder. Fall. I want one thing changed, she said. The visitation. 8 hours a month, not 4. And I want to be able to call Lee on her Christmas. That's all. Dan looked at Karen nodded slightly. Reasonable, not a dicker. Hours, Dan said. Calls on birthdays and holidays. Dan present for all in-person visits. That's the only change. Victoria nodded. Sat down. She picked up the pen. She saw Arnold Pine sign. Karen Wu signed. Dan. When it was done, stood up. She walked down the door. Karen went ahead to the car. In the foyer, alone, Victoria said, You'll regret this. Without me, you're nothing. You're a graphic designer who works from home. You can't do this alone. Looked at her. He thought the last 9 years. The lunches he'd made. Nights he'd stayed home. The daughter he'd raised. The house he'd kept. The was building another 12 minutes away. See, he said. He walked out the door. The October air was cold. The sky was that deep blue color gets in the fall. Theo's car was at the curb. Lily was in the back waving and got in. He looked at the house one more time. The porch. The front door. Window of Lily's room. And then he said, Let's go home. Theo pulled away from the curb. Behind them. In the house. Victoria. Alone. Holding a pen. And for the first time in 9 years, Dan didn't look back. The fallout took 3 weeks. Victoria's resignation was announced on a Monday. The press release said personal reasons and a desire to pursue other opportunities. The Denver Business Journal ran a piece speculating about internal tensions. The board, tipped off, quietly by Marcus, launched an internal audit. The Webb Holdings funds were returned, $2.4 million, back in the company accounts. Nobody went to prison. Nobody was named in the papers. It was, as Karen Wu had promised, quiet. Marcus left the company 2 weeks later. He took a job in Seattle, a CFO position at a startup, half the salary, twice the integrity. He texted Dan the day he left. Thanks for not letting me go down with her. Dan texted back, good luck. They didn't talk after that. There was nothing to say. 2 men, both played by the same woman, bound by a shared humiliation that neither of them wanted to revisit. Victoria moved to a condo in Lodi, smaller than the house, closer to the office, or what used to be the office. She called Dan once, a week after the settlement, and I want to see Lily, this week. Dan said, the agreement says 4 hours, supervised public play. I'll send you the address. She said, you're really going to do this, aren't you? And he said, yeah. And she hung. The first visitation was at a park in Washington. A Saturday, 2 in the afternoon. Victoria showed up in a designer coat and looking like she'd stepped out of a magazine, and Lily ran to her and hugged her and said, Mommy. And Dan sat on a bench 30 feet away and it was odd. Victoria didn't know what to say. She asked about school, about the dog, about what do you like to do these days, like Lily was a Lily talked anyway. She always She talked to when the 4 hour up. Victoria hugged Lily and said, I'll see you soon, B. And she looked at Dan and said, this. And Dan said, it is me. And that. The house on South Franklin was. He'd moved in. Lily had been static, running from room to room like she'd been on a. Murphy was ecstatic too. The garden was dead, October in Denver, Evan Brown. But Dan. He was sitting at the kitchen table one night going through design proposals when there was a knock. He wasn't expecting. 30. Sleep. Murphy was growling low throat. The sound he made when someone was at the door. It. Victoria was standing. She wasn't blazer. She wasn't wearing her coat. She was in sweatpants and an old hoodie. The one had bought her. A CU sweatshirt. Too big. And her hair was down and she wasn't wearing makeup. She looked, for the first time in years, like married. "Can I come in?" she said. Voice was small. Not the CEO voice. Not the controlled wife voice. Just in a voice. Hesitated. Stepped aside. She came in, sat in the kitchen. Dan, glass of water. She with both hands. Didn't drink. "I lost everything," she said. "The company. The light." Marcus left. "The board. They're treating me like I'm a criminal. My phone won't return my calls. My own mother said, I don't anymore." She followed. "I sit in that one and I think, get here." Dan didn't say anything. He waited. "Have everything." Her voice was shaky. "I thought, if I was smart enough, if I planned enough, judged it right, I could have the company and the fan Marcus and the excitement. I thought I could be two people. Wife and mother in Wash Park, and the CEO and partner in the Golden Triangle. I thought I could manage both versions. I thought I was that good." "You were that good," Dan said. "For 3 years. You managed it. Nobody knew. Not me, not Marcus, not you were that good." "Then why does it feel like I have nothing?" "Because we're managing lives, Victoria, not a life. A life doesn't need management. It needs," he didn't know the word. "It needs you to be there. All of you. Not a run. Not a performance. You." She was crying now. Quiet tears. The kind she'd always been embarrassed by. "I loved you, Dan. I did. At the beginning. Then, the company grew. Home. And Lily. And I felt like I was missing something. Like I was only half alive." Marcus made feel unseen. Like the whole person. Not just the wife and mother. The CEO. The woman. "I saw you," Dan said. "I saw all of it. You just didn't believe I did." She looked up. Her eyes were red. Can we try again?" "The marriage. I know that. But for Lily, for us. Can we be friends? Can we?" Dan's voice was gentle but firm. "I can't be your friend, Victoria. Not after what you did. Not after the psych eval. Not after the locks. Not after you tried to take my daughter. I can be civil. I can be Lily's father. And you can be Lily's mother. And we can coordinate schedules and be in the same room for her events. But we're not friends. We're not family. We're two people who share a child. And that," she nodded. She wiped her eyes. She stood up. To the door, at the threshold she turned. "Dan, I'm sorry. For all of it. For the lies. For Lily. I'm sorry." He'd waited 9 years for those words. He'd imagined them 100 times. In the shower, in the car, to a sleeping woman who wasn't really there. Had them, they felt small. Inadequate. Bandage on a wound that had already "I know." "Goodbye," she left. He closed the door. He locked it. The new lock. The one only he and Lily had keys to. He stood in the kitchen for a minute. The water glass was full. Wet shirt. She'd left it. He picked it up. The New Buffs logo faded. He thought about throwing it away. Instead, he folded it and put it in a box in the garage. Not because he didn't want to make a decision about it tonight. He went upstairs. Lily was asleep. The rabbit tucked under her. He sat on the edge of her bed and watched her breathe. She was half asleep. "Mommy here?" "She's here, Bug." "She coming back?" Dan kissed her forehead. "Someday. Visits. But not tonight. Tonight it's just us." "Okay." She rolled over. "I like just us." Dan sat there for a long time. House was quiet. The October wind rattled the window. Murphy was asleep of the bed, and Dan thought, "I did it. Didn't destroy her. I didn't become her. I got my daughter, my house, my name. It wasn't a victory, not the kind you celebrate, but it was something. It was enough." 4 months later, Dan's life looked nothing. Like he'd expected, and everything like he'd built. He and Lily still lived in the Wash Park house, the one with the garden, and the new locks, and the room where Lily had taken her first steps. Dan had thought about selling it, after everything. Too many memories, too much ghosts. But Lily had cried at the idea. "This is my house, Daddy." And so they'd stayed, and Dan was glad. The house wasn't Victoria's. It was theirs. The scuff marks by the front door were Lily's. The chipped tile in the kitchen was from a cooking accident Dan had had in 2021. The garden, now coming back to life in the February thaw, was full of bulbs Dan had planted the fall before. When he was still married and still pretending, he'd changed things. Small thing. The master bedroom was now his. He'd gotten a new bed, new sheets, a desk by the window where he worked. The guest room was Lily's art studio. She'd taken to painting, seriously, the way some kids take to soccer or video games, and the walls were covered in her work. The kitchen table was always covered in design sketches and crayon drawings and Murphy's dog. It was me. It was alive. Dan's design business had grown. Word, the kind of growth you can't pay. A coffee shop owner he'd designed a logo for had recommended him to a bookstore, who'd recommended him to a brewery, who'd recommended him to a tech startup that wanted something not corporate. Dan was busier than he'd ever. He worked at the kitchen table with Lily doing homework next, or at the desk in the bedroom after she was asleep. He made more money now than he had when Victoria was supposed. Not a lot more, but enough to feel alone. Victoria came once a month, 8 hours supervised place, usually the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, or zoo, or a park when the weather. She was better at. She'd started asking Lily about her paintings, about her friends, about the book she still didn't know Lily's name. She still didn't know that Lily was allergic to bees, but trying. And Dan, who sat on a bench 30 feet away, read a book. Because Lily deserved a mother who tried, even if it was late, even if it wasn't enough, Marcus texted once. In January, a photo of the Seattle skyline. Caption: "It rains here, a lot." Dan texted back, "Better than fraud." Marcus sent a laughing emoji. That was it. Friends. 3 friends. But there was a kind of under between them. The quiet, unspoken kind that comes from surviving. Theo and Maya had them Monday. Tacos always. Biscuit and Murphy chased hard. Lily played with Theo's 2 kids. Dan drank beer and talked about design and sports and anything except the last year. It was normal. It was boring. It was perfect. And then, in March, Lily's school had an art show and almost didn't go. He had a deadline, a logo for a new Friday. But Lily had said, "You have to come." Mike was in the front hallway, and Dan had said, "I wouldn't miss it for the world," and he'd meant it. The art school gym. Tables covered in drawings and paintings and clay sculptures. Parents milled around, holding cups of bad coffee, compliment children's art. Dan walked through, looking for Lily's. It in the front hallway, just like she'd said, the wall at child height, next to a drawing of a dinosaur color of a cat. Lily's painting was big. Acrylic. It showed 3 figures, a tall man with brown hair and a beard, little girl's hand. Next to them a cat, orange with stripes. The background was yellow, the color of sunshine, of dandelions, curtains open. There was no woman painting, no mother. Just the man, cat. At the bottom, in Lily's careful 8-year handwriting, was the title Family. Dan's a long time. He didn't cry. He didn't make a... He just looked. At the man with the beard. Him, definitely him, she'd painted the scar on his college accident. At the girl, Lee, in a pink dress, the one she'd worn of 3rd grade. At the orange cat, Mochi, the cat they did in December from a shelter, the one Victoria didn't ask. He thought about the lobby at California Street. Authorized personnel only sign. The security guard, Reyes, laughing and saying her husband every day. The man in the charcoal suit, walking a place. Dan had stood in months ago and thought, that door's to my wife's world. I just don't have access. The problem was permission. That if he just had the right badge, the right last name, he could walk through that area's life. He understood now. The door had never been the problem. The world behind it had never been his. It had been a set, a performance, a version of Victoria that existed for Marcus and the boy. And the Denver business community, a version that didn't include a husband in a Subaru who painted cats. His world wasn't behind that door. It was here, in a school gym, in front of a poster board painting of 3 figures and a cat, in a house with a garden and new locks and a kitchen table covered in sketches, in a dog like just us and meant it. Daddy. Lily ran up to him. She was wearing paint-stained jeans and an artist in glitters. Do you see it? Do you see my painting? I see it, Bug. He knelt down. It's amazing. The best one here. Really? Pointed at the figures. Who's this? You, duh. She pointed at the girl. That's me. And that's Mochi. Paused. I didn't draw that, okay? Dan looked at his daughter. At the painting. At the yellow background, the orange. The man holding the girl's hand. That's more than okay, he said. That's perfect, beamed. And off to find her friend. Damp. He hit the painting one more time. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A new client. A restaurant. Someone who'd work at the brewery. He pulled out the phone. He answered. Dan Mercer, Design Studio, he said. How can I help you? His name, Dan Mercer. Not Victoria's husband. Not the dead weight, the other husband. Not the man who didn't have access. Just Dan. Mercer, designer father, the guy who painted gardens and raised a daughter, walked a golden retriever and lived in a house with new locks and a kitchen table and sketches. He walked out of the school gym into the March afternoon, the phone at his ear, talking about color palettes and brand identity and deadlines. The sun was out. The snow was melting. The world was exactly as it should be. Small, warm, chosen, and behind him, taped to a wall at night, a little girl's painted tooth. This is our family.